Hello YouTubers, RogueMonkeyJr here, and in today's video I'm going to present to you my settings and keybinds for Battlefield 2042. Now, quick disclaimer, your mileage may vary. I'm making this video because a lot of people ask me like what I use for keybinds and stuff, but it all depends on like what kind of keyboard you're using, your hand size, what kind of mouse you have, and your personal preference. So watching this video might not give you the best key bindings for you, but it can surely serve as a guideline or at least help you figure out the keybinds that you might want to use to maximize your performance in Battlefield 2042. So we're going to start off the video in the general tab. So for control hints and reactive hints, I have these set as off, but if you're new to the Battlefield franchise, you might need those button hints to help you figure out what you need to press at what time. Once you get really used to playing the game and you've gotten your bearings straight, so to speak, I turn these off. I just feel it clutters the HUD and the screen for no reason, but it might help you early on if you're newer or you're trying out new keybinds and stuff. Moving on to display. So again, here you can also turn on and off the control hints and reactive hints. HUD motion, I turned that off. It really is distracting. Same thing for camera shake amount. Turn this on to the minimum. Soldier compass, I like always having it on to do quick callouts to my teammates when I'm playing with people in Discord. So it's really minimalistic. It only takes up a small part of your screen, so having it always on can be very useful. Same thing for fire mode indicator. I have this set to always on. So this is something they added in the most recent update. Before, you had to look at your crosshair or ADS to see your fire mode indicator, but now you can have it set to always on. Now moving on, you can change the colors of your squad, friendlies, enemies, and neutral. I just have it set to off. I find the colors are okay as is, but if you want them to pop out more, you can change these to a custom set of colors that you want. So that is very useful if certain colors pop out more to you. Moving on to the kill log, unfortunately this doesn't work, so even if you have the kill log on and show kills made by, I have it set to all. I like to know what's happening on the battlefield, but a lot of people like having it set to nearby, so they have a good idea of what's happening close to them, but unfortunately this doesn't seem to work. I only see kills made by my squad mates. Moving on to the crosshair, so I like having a color that clashes or is very it contrasts a lot with the environment. So I have it set to a bright green, and you can see here with different environments, so shadows, midtones, and brights, it still shows up pretty well, the crosshair, so this is why I have it set to that. Moving on to sound, I turn down music volume quite a bit. It is distracting and does sometimes muffle footsteps, so I have that set to only 10. Same thing for the in-game announcer. I don't need the callouts, the constant callouts being so loud to say XYZ flag has been capped by our team or capped by the enemy. For configuration, I have the sound configuration set to stereo and then the audio mix set to night mode. This is what sounds best for my personal ears, so this is very subjective. So try the different modes and see what sounds best to you and what gives you the most audio positioning for footsteps. Definitely play around with this and try it out, but yeah, I have it set to stereo and the night mode. And I also have the hit indicator set to Battlefield 2042. Right now there's only that option or having it off, so I like having the hit indicator. And in-world radio music, so those are the little Bluetooth speakers you see around the world. I just have it set to on. It gives a little bit of ambiance to the game. So moving on to the nitty-gritty of the video. So mouse and keyboard. So these are the general key bindings. So full map, I have it set to F. I find M is a little bit too far to open the map, and I find myself opening the map a lot. So maybe having it on a key that is closer to where your WSD key is, F is a really good choice, and that is why I chose that key, and I've been using that key since Battlefield 3. I've been using F to open my mini-map, so it's just second nature to me. As for the rest, this is really personal preference, so chat, all these different things, not all that important. Moving on to on foot. So interact, this is by default E. Same thing, full map, I have it set to F. These are all the different vehicle seats here. Comoros, that is on Q. It is a key that is very easy to reach. Not too far off from your WSD key, easy to use to ping and give orders if you're the squad leader. So having it set to Q, just close to where everything else is ideal. And then the rest, again, you have the chat keys. So moving on to movement. So this is where I start to change more key bindings, and they're not so much default. So obviously walk forward, all that stuff. You have the defaults. Sprint is left shift. Traversal sprint, it's double left shift. So if I press it twice, I will start doing the traversal sprint. Crouch, I have it set to hold, and I have no button set for toggle crouch. I personally don't use toggle crouch all that much, which is the reason why I just have a key set to hold. I like having a lot of control over my character, which is the reason why I have only the crouch hold button bound to something and not the toggle crouch. As for prone, I think it's Z by default, but I have it set to C. I find Z a very inconvenient key on a keyboard to use for anything. My Z key is completely useless. I don't use it at all. I have it set to C, a lot easier to reach in my opinion, even more so than like X, which I know some people use for prone, but I use C. I think it is a good key, easy to reach for your thumb without having to make a weird contortion with your hands. Moving on to weapons and equipment. So I have the melee takedown rebound to T. I think by default it is F, but I have my map set to F. So yeah, the melee takedown is T. Primary weapon, all these things I didn't change. The call-in tablet, I have it set to G. By default, I think it is B, but you're gonna see it makes more sense here when I go down the list. So I have that set to G, and then I have the toggle underbarrel set to B, which I do believe takes over the default for the call-in tablet. The reason being, it is very accessible for my thumb to press B, as opposed to if I were to press G, I would probably use my index finger. So that would take my finger off of D, which is the strafe right. And I don't want that. I always want to have as much control on my character as possible. So having the fire mode or underbarrel set to B, I don't take my fingers off the WASD keys. And generally speaking, when I'm calling in a vehicle, I'm not in combat. So there's a lot less chance that I'll need to strafe right in that situation. So that's why I changed the toggle underbarrel to that key. Same thing for fire mode, it is V. I think by default it is V, I'm not quite sure. But same principle, having it set to V makes it so I don't have to take my fingers off the WSD key. Movement in a Battlefield game or in any first-person shooter is key. If you stop moving, you're probably dead, especially when there's a lot of people around, and Lord knows there are a lot of people running around all over the place in Battlefield 2042. As for modify weapon attachments, so this is something new to the Battlefield franchise, so the plus system. Now I have this set to mouse 4, and I have no keyboard key assigned to this specific action. Now the reason I have it set to mouse 4 is I want to be able to change this on the fly and not have to use my left hand that's on my keyboard to do it. So I can do this while still moving my mouse around easily. All I have to do is hold down mouse 4, put the attachments on real quick, and then let it go, and then all the attachments are going to equip to my gun. Boom, Bob's your uncle. You reset your weapon to have a close quarter setup because you're moving in on an objective where there's a lot of infantry combat. There you go. It is easily accessible. You can change it on the fly instead of having to press a button that is maybe already used for something. So right now, my WASD key, obviously movement, Q is the comma rows, E is to enter and exit or use, R is reload, T is melee, F is the map, G is the call-in tablet, B is the underbarrel, V is the fire mode, C is the prone. So you can see that we're starting to, like, there's not a whole lot of keys left for the modify weapon attachments, so the plus system, which is why I have it set as a mouse button. It is very convenient to use, easily accessible. Doing it on the fly is a breeze, so that is why I would suggest maybe having this on your mouse. As for cycle primary weapon, I also have this set to my mouse, so that would be mouse 3, which is right underneath the plus system that I have bound. So that's just an easier way instead of having to swap with your number keys up top. So no matter what I have equipped, if I press mouse 3, it'll go back to my primary weapon, and if I press it again, it'll go to my secondary. So if I have, for example, my gadget out or my grenade, and I want to quickly switch back to my primary weapon, boom, press the mouse button, you're for sure going to take out your primary weapon. You won't fumble with the number keys up top. So just a very good idea to have that easily accessible, because sometimes you have to change between your gadgets and your primary weapons rapidly. So moving on to the vehicles. So I'm just going to go through vehicle driver because they're mostly the same across the board. So again, full map is F, and if we go to movement here, obviously the default WSD, boost is left shift, and don't forget you can use a handbrake, which is left control whenever you're driving something, so keep that in mind. It can come in pretty useful. Moving on to weapons and equipment, switch weapon set to my thumb button, which is the same one that I have for primary weapon when I'm on foot. And the equipment slots I changed, so equipment 1 is B and equipment 2 is V. Again, this is personal preference. These keys are the ones I use for underbarrel and fire mode respectively, and I like using keys like that are close and that allow me to use it with the thumb as opposed to having to take my finger off of the WSD, which is why I have B and V set for both of these. Now moving on to the last part of the video here, we are almost done. Again, you can go into accessibility. There's a couple of little things here that we already saw previously in the display, which is a HUD general, but there's a couple of more options here. So obviously, turn motion blur off. You don't want that. It drives me absolutely insane. This is something that wasn't in the display settings here, so you have to go to accessibility. Menus are kind of confusing, to be completely honest, but yeah, I would completely turn this off. And then moving on to controls here. So soldier sprint, I like having it set to hold. The reason being, it gives you a lot more control over your character, albeit your pinky finger, which is used to, generally speaking, run and sprint, might get tired after a while because you're holding shift a lot, but trust me, it is way better than having it set to toggle. At least in my personal experience, I love having control over my movement, over my fine movements. I don't like having actions being toggled, especially when it comes to movement. As for soldier weapon zoom, this is the contrary. I like having this set to toggle. The reason being, if you have it set to hold, you're putting pressure on the right trigger, so mouse 2, which would be the right click, you're putting pressure on that. And I find it hinders my aim a lot more than having it set to click, and then it just toggles in, then you can precisely aim, and then when you want to ADS out, just press it again or start running, and boom, you are out of your ADS and ready to go. So it's just really a personal preference thing. I know a lot of people like having it set to hold, but I would strongly suggest having it set to toggle and see how that feels for you. Steady scope, have it set to hold. You get more control that way as opposed to having it set to toggle and then you run out of breath and stuff. So you know that when you're holding shift, you're setting your scope. When you let it go, you're not setting it anymore. Just very simple. Vehicle weapon zoom, same thing. Toggle as the soldier weapon zoom, just gives you a lot more control, I find, on your mouse movement as opposed to having pressure on that right trigger or right mouse button. Revive interaction. Now this is something that was hold before and now it's toggle. The reason I have it set to toggle is because my interaction key is the E. So if I have to hold E, again, it's all a principle of having my fingers not be off my WASD key as much as possible. So if I have it set to E and it's hold, then that means when I'm reviving somebody, I can't strafe right. But if I have it set to toggle, you just run up to somebody when you're reviving them, you press E, you start reviving them, and then you can shuffle around left, right, crouch, and then move around instead of just being a target for your enemy. If you're standing still while you're reviving somebody, you are easy pickings and pretty much a free kill for enemies that are around. And as for the request skip revive here, so this really doesn't matter. I have it set to hold so I don't accidentally press it and then forget to unpress it, especially for the skip. So if I would accidentally press the space bar, and if it's set to toggle, and I don't notice, then it would just automatically skip the revive, which is why I have it set to hold. So if I start holding the space bar and then I see a medic come up, then I just let it go, and then it stops the timer to skip said revive. All right, so last little bit here, going back to mouse and keyboard, we're gonna change a couple of settings here. So for the mouse aim sensitivity, I'm not gonna talk about this in this video. It is a very complex, and we can go into a deep dive about this in another video, but not for today. So moving on here to movements, soldier sprint, I have it set to hold as previously mentioned. Double tap to forward to sprint. I don't like having that. That is the worst thing ever, because sometimes you want to just, go forward 2 steps real quick by pressing W and then you start sprinting all of a sudden. I absolutely despise having double tap forward to sprint, so I have it set to off. Sprint to vault over. I don't even know what this actually does, but it seems like an awful thing, so I have it set to off. Always use traversal sprint. I also have this set to off because when you're using traversal sprint all the time, it takes a lot longer to ready up your weapon when you stop running. So having the ability to traversal sprint by double tapping shift is better in my opinion. Moving on to zoom, we talked about this. Hold, steady scope would be toggle, and moving on to other here, parachute auto deploy. I have this set to off. I'd rather deploy my parachute when I damn well please. Air spawn parachute auto deploy. So this is when you're spawning on somebody that's already in the air. I had this set to on because I don't really know their distance relative to the ground, and I don't want to, you know, spawn on somebody and immediately fall to my death because I didn't have time to open my parachute. So that's why this one is set to on. Quick fill grenades, I don't like having this on. And the reason why I don't like having it set to on is because I like having control over where I throw my grenade. So I like taking my grenade physically out, having it in my hand, and then clicking my mouse button to throw it where I want, and maybe even, you know, cock my arm back and wait to throw it. I don't like having to just press the button and it automatically throws a grenade. I feel you lose a lot of precision on where you're throwing your grenades, so that's why I have it set to off. So moving on to uniform soldier aiming, I have this set to on, and by default the coefficient is 133. So basically what this does is it makes all the sensitivities feel the same no matter the level of zoom that you have. So uniform soldier aiming is designed to make aiming down sight sensitivity feel the same for all infantry weapons that have different ADS magnifications. So this really helps out your muscle memory to not have to readapt for every different type of zoom aim sensitivity that you have. So that's why I have it set to on. Moving on to vehicles here, we're almost done, bear with me. So vehicle boost, I have it set to hold, same principle. I like having control over what I'm doing in the movements. Vehicle weapon zoom is set to toggle, and I have the same thing here. Uniform vehicle aiming is set to on, and the coefficient is 133, same thing as on foot. So these are my general settings and key bindings. I might make another video for the display settings, so the actual video settings of the game and what runs best for me. Again, this is a simple guideline video. It's not like all around best keybinds. These are the ones that I find are the best for my personal taste, but again, this might depend on what kind of keyboard you have. Most notably, if you have a different keyboard like an Azerty keyboard or something that they use in Europe. And obviously these key bindings are you're gonna have to adapt them to what I was saying. But yeah, it's just a good guideline. I find always having your fingers on WSD, I think, is the big takeaway here. So having your movement be unhindered the majority of the time will make you stay alive more. So that is one of the big principles here of why I set all these key bindings as they are. But again, try them out, see if you like them, tailor them to your personal needs, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if it seemed a little bit rambly, but I just had a lot of things to say about the key bindings. Making a video for this might seem very trivial, but it can help you get better at the game and just have a better layout for everything that you need to do at any given time within Battlefield. But anyways, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.